The world has entered into a new era. Fake news can easily spread on social media, resulting in refashioned politics and convoluted news. And public trust in institutions like political establishment and media is declining, and making these institutions having an identity crisis. And with growing populism and online freedom, media and politicians are struggling to regain their credibility and ethics. So, where should the public go in a time of post-truth? And welcome to our special program of The Point to talk about media and politics in an era of post-truth. And today we have three guests in our studio to talk about this. Professor Jin Canrong, a professor from the School of International Studies at Renmin University. And also from Renmin University, Francesco Sisci, senior researcher at Center of European Studies, and also Einar Tangen, our current affairs columnist. And before we talk about this, let's take a look how truth has been developing over the past few years, and how did we get to where we are now. And let's take a look.
Post-truth became Oxford Dictionary's word of the year 2016, meaning relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Basically, when emotion beats truth. During his presidential campaign, Donald Trump claimed that thousands of people were celebrating after the 9/11 terrorist attacks.
A heavy Arab population that were cheering as the buildings came down.
While PolitiFact, an award-winning fact-checking website, rated his statement as pants on fire, the most severe rank for a lie. One of the main slogans from the pro-Brexit campaign was that we spent £350 million a week to Brussels, which could be spent on the NHS or National Health Service instead. Not true. The actual amount to send to Brussels each week in 2014 was £276 million, a little over £100 million of which is spent on things in the UK, such as subsidising farmers and funding research. Hours after the referendum result was announced, Nigel Farage, the most prominent campaigner for Leave, said making the claim had been a mistake.
The £350 million a week we send to the EU, which we will no longer send to the EU, can you guarantee that's going to go to the NHS?
No, I can't, and I would never have made that claim. That was one of the mistakes I think that the Leave campaign made.
Hang on a moment, that was one of your adverts.
Well, it wasn't one of my adverts, I can assure you.
Well, that was one of the Leave campaign adverts. But that money was going to go to the NHS.
And I think they made a mistake.
From Trump's phony claims to Brexit's fraudulent promise, we have been navigating through a web of bogus truth. Separating fact from fiction and reason from emotion has become increasingly complex. How will politics survive the facts crisis in this post-truth era? Are media outlets across the globe no longer bringing us the truth?
So, this is what happened over the past 2 years in the political arena. I want your take, Professor Jin. What happened to truth? Why we're now living in a post-truth era?
I noticed last year, not this year, last year the Davos, the World Economic Forum, they find several titles. One is post-crisis, another is post-truth. So become a topic of Davos World Forum. That means that's a problem, a real problem.
Why do we have the problem at this time? What happened?
I think, although Chinese people very appreciated this old saying called 实事求是, find the truth from facts, but actually it's not easy. How to identify facts, always problem. But in recent years, there are several reasons made the situation more complicated. And one is that in many countries we see more social split, political split. We can take UK and US, those two leading countries in modernization, those two advanced countries, they split it. And you know, people tend to believe what they want to believe. So some people connect another term with post-truth, that is alternative truth. People just choose what they want. And another factor should be internet. You know, internet something is good. It will help us to learn many new things, right? But the internet also has negative side. That is, you are easy to find what you want. So I think internet will gradually hurt some people, especially young people, because that way they will make young people affiliate with machine.
Einar, what is your take? Does this apply to American politics?
Well, particularly in America, because what you have is a situation where people have lost faith in the current system. I mean, you can stretch it back for a long period of time, the kind of economic malaise that you've had where real incomes have not increased, particularly in 2008 and 2009, when there's this big meltdown and the government rushed to the aid of very large entities. But middle and lower class America just took it on the chin. No one bailed them out. No, people would offer words of sympathy, but there was no real help. So you've seen this kind of political polarization which has occurred when the American two-party system is designed to push both parties towards the middle. Now it is pushing everything to the side. You can have small groups within each party who can hold up based on ideological concerns about the shape of this. So people sitting in the Midwest and the rest of these places say, this has nothing to do with me. I don't understand it. I think I am being bamboozled. I am being cheated. And therefore, I do not hold with this. So look at Trump supporters. They continue, despite on a daily basis saying 3.5 average untrue things or exaggerated things a day, they still say he's wonderful, he's doing a great job, he's doing exactly what they want him to do, which is in essence attack an establishment they don't understand.
So they are not satisfied with the status quo. They would rather believe in some falsehood when they're taking their ballots.
But, if you talk to them, they will say, look, everything we've been fed by the establishment, by the media, it's all been false. It has not helped us. All right? We feel we have been left behind. And therefore, we are not going to take it anymore. We're not going to listen to the news. We're not going to listen to these centrist politicians because all they're preaching is that this is complicated and that it's going to take time and resources to do it. I want somebody who gets up there and tells me, I can solve this. I can take care of this. The kind of simplistic rhetoric that goes along with things like Mussolini, Hitler, all of the people in the past who have used these exact same tools in order to garner public support. And let us not put a gloss on it. When you say post-fact, what we're saying is people are telling lies to get votes, to get power.
Is the same case in Europe when the British voted to get out of European Union? Is it the same thing that they are not satisfied with the political establishment?
To some extent, yes. But I would say, if I may add, there is a bigger fact at play here. That is, in a way, the Western world, or the world, thought for a few years, for 20 years maybe, that after the end of the Cold War, really history had ended, and really globalization would make everybody rich. Eventually, the 2008 crisis proved that this was not true, that there was a polarization. Somebody got rich, somebody got poor. Things were not evenly distributed. So this is, I think, the end of one take of globalization. Globalization has come, the globalization we saw at the end of the Cold War has come to an end. Nothing else is in sight. We are in a status of crisis because the people with knowledge trust the establishment and think the establishment should solve itself, should come back again, and then they want to reestablish the old truth. Some people, common people, who feel cheated, bamboozled, as Inan said, by the establishment, don't think anything, don't believe anything.
So you're saying this is actually a trust issue. Some people don't have trust in the institution at all.
They don't have trust in the institutions, And some want to reestablish, revamp the institutions as they were. So there is a crisis of the institutions. Institutions have to be renewed. This is, I think, the bigger issue at play now.
So what do you think the political elites have done wrong to make things right? People don't believe in facts. They don't believe in truth. They only believe in somebody they have faith in. Is that something?
Actually, we should express it in this way. People still believe in truth, still believe in facts, but they choose what they believe. This is the truth. You know, so
there is no absolute criteria for deciding it is true or not.
It's basically relating with the interests. You know, those losers in globalization, they tend to choose the new kind of leader, that's a populist leader. You know, actually, populists appeared on many places. Donald Trump is typical one. Putin, Vladimir Putin, another one. I think Modi, the leader of India also, to some extent Abe Shinzo-san also. So actually there is a mood in the world politics, strongman coming back. Behind the strongman is populists. So the different people will choose different facts. That's the problem.
And they don't believe in the absolutism of truth and facts.
Yes. So in a way, to elaborate on what Professor Jin was saying, is that the winners, so to speak, the winners of the past phase have to take into consideration the quest of the populace, the common people. They have to meet those needs. If they don't come together, this kind of popular demand and the old establishment, and they keep being separated, then we will see a deepening of crisis. If somebody from the old establishment will try to meet the needs of the common people, or somebody from the common people, from the populace, will try to reach out to the old institutional truth, then we can think that there will be a new common ground for everybody.
But it seems people on either side of the divide are not in good mood to approach to the other side. Why is this happening? Why the divide is so deep that nobody is willing to break out of their bubble and reach out to the other side?
Well, it depends on where you were. If you're talking in India or Russia or the United States, what you have is a kind of this polarization, especially in areas where you have democracy. And this is one of the questions that keeps coming up. What are the failings and limits of democracy? Have we reached them? Has this kind of post-truth crisis exposed a vulnerable Achilles heel in what could turn out to be mob rule? I mean, one of the things you didn't mention was the anger that is out there. It's palpable. When you talk to these people, these men and women are angry, all right? And this is driving their fears, their hatreds, everything that is negative.
Let's take a look at how emotion has been probably manipulated, and what is the role of the media in shaping public narrative. Let's take a listen.
Why are we not having a press conference? You said on Friday we have a press conference.
We had a press conference. We just had a press conference.
We asked you some more questions.
It doesn't bother me at all, but, you know, I like real news, not fake news. You're fake news. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
But the first time he confronts the public, it's a falsehood?
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving, Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts? Alternative facts, 4 of the 5 facts he uttered. The one
Chuck,
thing he got right was Zeke Miller. 4 of the 5 facts he uttered were just not true.
They want to point out that opinions aren't formed the way they were 25 years ago. Today we have fake sites, bots, trolls, things that regenerate themselves, reinforcing opinions with certain algorithms.
So a lot of finger-pointing between politicians at both traditional media and social media, fake news, alternative facts. What do you make of the new terms in terms of media's behavior?
I think media become a scapegoat You know, the real reason is the social split. In my memory, in 1990s, that's the golden age of the West, especially the golden age of U.S. Economy is good, and the international influence get to the pitch. But now, the U.S. really facing problem.
But when Donald Trump said that some of the news media are fake news, a lot of people believe in that.
Yes.
Or you think Trump is just manipulating the opinions of the public by using that term?
I think because there are people in the U.S. society, many grassroots people, they, just like Tangen said, they are angry, right? They don't trust the media already. Then Donald Trump take use of these facts for his partisan interests. So actually it's a interaction process. Their anger there, and then he used the anger and make people more angry. You know, then he get the backlash from the other side, right? Then you see the spiral fighting. So that's no good for multi-partisan politics.
But Angela Merkel pointed out that there are social medias using bots and algorithms to really change people's mindsets and perceptions about the world.
There are problems with social media because, of course, social media don't have a hierarchy. So news from People's Daily, New York Times, or My Voice are just equal. So because there are no hierarchy, like young people, Professor Jin's students, don't know which is which, and then it's hard to tell. But let me say something positive. It is not all negative. In France and Germany, for instance, we see that populist forces have been defeated. When
Are you so sure?
Macron was elected. When Macron was elected, there was a lot of fear that Le Pen could be elected. And Le Pen, Marine Le Pen, who was the hero of the populists, she was defeated. And also in Germany, yes, the neo-fascist forces are stronger, but still less than 10%. So, yes, what I mean, populist forces are there, they will be there, but they can be defeated. They are not doomed to rule us, provided the institutions can manage to have a proper answer. In France and Germany, they did it. In other countries, they did not. So we will see how things will develop.
But with the accelerating development of social media, it is getting harder and harder for social media take up the responsibility of truth holder, is it?
Yes, it is. I mean, today there was a recent move by Twitter to get rid of a Wisconsin Republican who had run for office unsuccessfully against Paul Ryan, and he was taking Cheddar Man, which is this English thing that showed that it was a very dark person, and he was putting on the body of the woman who's going to be marrying the next prince of England. So, I mean, this kind of thing, they're doing it, but how do you do this? I mean, one of the issues that's confronting every single government is what is the internet? At first we thought it was going to be this broad superhighway that would connect everybody and everything, and that it would bring truth, because truth was at your fingertips. You could see it. You could source things. But as you pointed out, sources are all equal. It all becomes noise in there. China's answer has been a sovereign internet, saying that we are responsible for what is created in China and what comes into China, that we need to guard our citizens against fraud, terrorism, against rumor, and things like this. Now, from the other side, there's this argument that's saying you're impinging on people's ability to speak, on the press freedom, on privacy. But there has to be some sort of meeting ground, or I'm not really willing to say, let's flip a coin. Germany and France turned out okay. Britain and the United States didn't.
And you believe in different cultures there is a different trade-off between the two? Because recently,
absolutely,
according to a South Africa-based market research group, New World Wealth, they rate us, China Global Television Network, as the most neutral international news media, outstripping CNN and BBC. They say we are neutral because we don't take stands on a lot of international issues.
Well, it's this issue about reporting. I mean, you're the professional journalist here. In the past, it was reporting. CNN, and I may agree with their positions, but in the end, is it objective reporting when probably 80% of what you see is focused on Trump and the failures of what they perceive the White House to be? This brings into questions. You can ask the same questions about Fox TV. But this era of yellow journalism is not new. It has historically been there in the past. It was in the United States very prevalently during the robber baron periods when this was a time of manipulating the masses in order to get what you want. The issue is we are now back in that time. There were a lot of bad things that happened because of that. Are we willing to flip a coin to see what happens? I think there needs to be a stronger approach to these things. You cannot have rights without responsibilities. And this is a question that each country must deal with on their own.
Different perspective and values shaping different news organizations' reporting. For example, we have CNN reporter Elisa Laporte talking about the North Korea attending the Olympics. The U.S. is wary of allowing North Korea's government to gain economic concessions from the South through its so-called charm offensive, referring to DPRK's delegation attending Pyeongchang. And CGTN also has this report. And CGTN's American reporter Jim Spellman wrote, the U.S. is using the Winter Olympics to send a tough message about the DPRK nuclear program. It seems different news organizations, when they have different perspectives, they have different stories. So, does it mean there is no neutral storytelling? There is no absolute objective storytelling?
Of course, I think every news media has its own, I would say, interests, inclinations. But this is, I would say, natural, provided you do it professionally. And then I read this kind of media, and I know that this kind of inclination, then there is this other kind of media, then there is this kind of inclination. But this is different from fake news. This is completely different. It's always existed.
But if I'm a reader, an audience, how can I trust you? You have your interests on your mind.
Well, because if you're a reader, you know who is roughly behind these media and what is behind it. But if you have the establishment, say France or Germany, there is a common sense of goal, a common sense of purpose, then the seeking of the truth comes to a center and they try to converge. However, if, as Professor Jin was saying, society is very split, and the two trends of society don't meet in the middle, then there is a total polarization. And that is extremely dangerous, the total polarization. So you have to look at the society, at the commonality of the media to really think that there is something that brings together. And then you can prefer. But if you lose a common ground, then everything is lost. We are rudderless.
And are you an optimist or a pessimist in terms of seeking commonalities to bring people with different perspectives closer?
No, not at this point. Once again, I would return to this idea of anger. And also, when it comes to this issue about reporting, I think it's a little bit deeper than just the perspectives of the news organizations on top. It has a lot to do with everything that you've learned as an individual. In America, you're taught American history. It's taught from an American historical perspective. If you're in England, it's different. Italy, different. China, different. So it's very...
But is it a constructive process? Everybody actually listen to what the others is being said?
No. And this is the problem.
Why is that happening? What can be done?
Let's go back to the internet. As you said, so much of it is just noise. I mean, everything seems the same. It's very hard to weight something that's this way or that way. Now, let us be clear. Donald Trump is not a savior. His legislation is not trying to help the very people who voted for him. In fact, it seems that it's hurting him. Health care. One of the earliest pieces of legislation he passed on that first day was a piece that was going to increase the average cost of low-income mortgages. how is this going to help his base? So the people who seize power based on the unhappiness of others do not assume that they're going to help those.
But what do you think the general public or the institutions should do, and the media, to turn things around? Whether this is the right way that our world is headed? Professor Jin.
I think media should take more responsibility.
Media? You mean the established media?
Yeah.
Rather than social media?
You know, looking back to the history, all the politicians want to use the facts in their favor, you know. So that's just nature, human nature. They want to use any news in their favor. So then it's very important to have a credible media organization. But with social splitted, with the coming of internet, the authority, the trust towards media
is declining.
So that's a very serious problem, not only for media organizations.
What is your recipe?
Society.
What is your recipe? How can we do things differently?
I have no answer at the moment. That's a big challenge, not only for media industry, but
yes,
for the society.
But for media, let me say something that actually, being in the media, when we were starting being a journalist, when we were supposed to report a news, whatever news, we had to have, of course, one source. And then we had to look up for a second source, at least a second source to back it up. But in looking for a second source, we had to look for a contrarian source. So we don't go just looking for something that confirms.
But now it's just the opposite on social media. Nobody's doing that on social media platforms.
The problem is that it is fast. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you were supposed to file a story a week. So you had plenty of time to check, counter-check, and you didn't have to file a story unless you felt sure. So on your desk, you had maybe dozens of stories that were there, and you wouldn't file one. Now, it's just file. So no times for checking, it's all reactions.
So what are we to do?
The problem is, I think, that social media, they have to set up some kind of hierarchy. That is, established media should have some kind of privileged position. And people's ranting, a different kind of thing. Now, people's ranting has their value. There is a lot of good value. Of course, you have to sift through. I mean, you cannot just take. But if lots of people complain about these things, you have to take it seriously with a critical mind.
Very briefly. I'm going to disagree with my learned colleague. First off, there already is a separation. If you're reading Reuters or you're looking at CGTN or some other established news organization versus Joe Blow with a very funny-sounding handle on his name, you know that there is a difference.
But they don't trust them.
It doesn't matter whether you trust them. The issue is actually CNN and groups like that. The fact that they are politicizing this news, that they're trying to drive it home, is what is in essence undermining the impartiality of the news. You need to have news that says, look, this is what he said, this is where he said it, all right? Here are the reactions of the people who were there, here are the reactions on the outside, instead of trying to draw it all together. Now, as a commentator, that's what I'm supposed to do. But as a reporter, I think you have a duty to put the facts out and separate them. You cannot put it all together. And this is what social media, unfortunately, has done.
And it's getting more and more difficult in this time of social media. Well, running out of time, very fascinating talks. Thank you so much, Professor Jin, Francesco, and also Einar.
Thank you.
And you've been watching a special edition of The Point on CGTN. We've been talking about the role of media and politics in the era of post-truth. I'm Zoe in Beijing. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.